the golden heart of the bustling city of Untold, where fortunes were made overnight and dreams often came with a price, there lived a man whose wealth was legendary, but whose kindness was even greater. His name was Chief Darlington Chukwu, a man admired not for the riches he possessed, but for the richness of his heart. People often said that Chief Darlington's wealth was a river, but his compassion was an ocean. His mansion sat atop a hill, painted in soft white and surrounded by gardens that bloomed year-round. But what truly made the mansion special were the people who lived in it, the maids, the gardeners, the cooks, the guards, and staff of every kind who had found not only employment there, but a family. Chief Darlington believed something deeply, something he repeated often. If God gives you plenty, let others drink from your cup. He treated every worker in his home not as a servant, but as a child entrusted to his care. Every morning he made sure the maids had breakfast before starting their duties. If one of them fell ill, he personally arranged for medical treatment. If a maid wished to study at night school, he paid the fees and bought the books. When a gardener's son lost his father, Chief Darlington took full responsibility for the boy's education. When a cook's daughter was getting married, he gifted her with a dowry that made her weep with gratitude. In return, the staff adored him. They worked not out of fear, but out of love. But the center of Chief Darlington's world, the crown upon his head, and the rhythm of his heartbeat, was Lady Clara Chukwu, his devoted wife. They had been married for over 25 years, yet they loved each other like newlyweds. Lady Clara was elegant in the simple way that flowers are elegant, soft-spoken, gentle, but with a presence that filled the room. They were never seen apart. When he attended business meetings abroad, she went with him. When she traveled for charity, he went with her. Their marriage was the kind of union people wrote novels about. Every evening, after the household tasks were done, Chief Darlington and Lady Clara walked hand in hand through the garden, talking about their dreams, their memories, and the future they hoped their son, Michael, would build someday. Yes, they had only one child, Michael Chukwu, studying abroad, preparing to inherit his father's empire. Chief Darlington often said, "Michael will lead with a soft heart, not a hard hand." Their hope in him was strong. Life seemed perfect. Until the night everything changed. It began with a quiet evening. Lady Clara was in the kitchen supervising dinner preparations while Chief Darlington relaxed on the sofa, reading the newspaper like he did every night. The maids moved around softly, humming familiar tunes as they worked. Then suddenly Chief Darlington gasped. The newspaper slipped from his hands. He clutched his chest, his face twisted with pain. "Darling," Lady Clara cried, rushing to him. The maids screamed. The mansion erupted in panic. Doctors arrived within minutes, rushing into the living room. Machines beeped. Needles pierced skin. Prayers filled the halls. But death, once it chooses a moment, rarely changes its mind. Chief Darlington looked into his wife's eyes one last time. His breath slowed. His fingers tightened around hers. "My love," he whispered. Lady Clara held him tightly, shaking her head violently as tears soaked his shirt. "No, don't leave me," she begged. "Please, I can't live without you." But those were the last words she ever spoke while standing. Chief Darlington's chest fell still. His eyes dimmed. His hand relaxed. Lady Clara let out a sound so heart-shattering that even the maids in the hallway collapsed in tears. She pressed her head to his chest, holding him as if her own heartbeat depended on his. And then her body grew still. Her breath stopped. Her fingers intertwined with his grew cold. She had followed him into death. When the doctor checked her pulse, he stepped back slowly. "She's gone," he whispered. Gone with her head resting on her husband's chest, hand in hand exactly as they had lived. News spread across Untold City before dawn. Streets filled with mourners. Even business rivals sent condolences. Markets closed early. Schools held candlelight gatherings. A love story had ended. A city was grieving. And far away, across the ocean, a young man named Michael Chukwu was about to receive the call that would change his life forever. The news of Chief Darlington and Lady Clara's passing spread through Anduka City like wildfire. It began as a whisper, carried by trembling lips and tearful voices, until the entire city seemed to lose its breath. By dawn, people had gathered outside the gates of the Chukwu mansion, lighting candles, holding hands, and praying. Their faces reflected shock, grief, and disbelief. For many, Chief Darlington had been more than a wealthy man. He had been a man of the people, a beacon of generosity, a protector of the weak. And Lady Clara had been the gentle force beside him, the heart of every charitable act, the hand that soothed the broken. Their deaths felt like the sun had gone out. Inside the mansion, chaos and sorrow collided. The maids cried uncontrollably, some shaking so hard they couldn't stand. Others sat on the floor, holding hands, remembering the couple's kindness. Madame Clara once paid for my mother's surgery. One maid sobbed. Chief sent my brother to university, another whispered through tears. They were angels, an elderly gardener said, wiping his eyes with trembling fingers. Angels who lived like humans. The cooks refused to enter the kitchen. The guards stood by the gate, heads bowed. The atmosphere inside the mansion felt heavy, like the walls themselves were mourning. Meanwhile, across the ocean, Michael Chukwu was preparing for bed in his university dormitory when his phone rang. He answered casually, unaware of the tsunami waiting on the other side. Michael. It was the family lawyer, Mr. Bakari, but his voice was broken, strained in a way Michael had never heard. You must sit down. Michael felt a sting of dread shoot through his chest. What is it? Did something happen at home? There was a long silence, too long. Then the lawyer whispered, Your father and your mother. They're both gone. The phone slipped from Michael's hand and crashed onto the floor. The world instantly tilted. The air thickened. His legs gave out beneath him as he fell against the wall. No, 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 he cried, grabbing the phone again. What are you talking about? How can they both be gone? His voice cracked into a whisper. They were fine. We just spoke. The lawyer sniffed, trying to steady himself. They died together, Michael. She held him until her last breath. The words shattered him. He felt something painful rising in his chest, something between a sob and a scream. His roommate ran into the room, startled, but Michael pushed him away, burying his face in his hands as he shook violently. His parents, his only family, were gone. He booked a flight home that night, not even packing properly. On the plane, he sat in silence, staring blankly at the seat in front of him. Passengers passed by, unaware that the young man in seat 7A had just lost the two people he loved most in the world. When he arrived at Anduka City, he was met by a convoy of black cars. The maids, guards, and neighbors waited outside the airport. The moment he stepped out of the terminal, the maids rushed toward him, surrounding him in a tight circle. Some hugged him, some fell to their knees in grief. Some simply cried, "We're so sorry, sir." The sight crushed him. They were mourning with him, not for him. When he entered the mansion, the silence was painful. Every corner held memories. Every chair held stories. The house felt bigger without the laughter of his parents echoing through the halls. The funeral was the largest the city had seen in decades. Thousands attended. People overflowed into the streets. The governor sent a speech. Children who had been sponsored by the couple walked with flowers in their hands. The choir sang hymns that made strong men weep. Michael stood in front of the graves, holding two white roses. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and gold, as if the heavens themselves were bidding farewell. He placed the roses gently on the coffin and whispered, "Thank you for loving me. Thank you for loving the world." When the coffins were lowered, the crowd cried loudly. Two lives so large had left a hole impossible to fill. That night, as Michael walked through the mansion alone, he visited his parents' bedroom. Their clothes were still hanging neatly. Lady Clara's perfume lingered softly in the air. Chief Darlington's favorite reading glasses still lay on the table. Michael sat on the bed, holding a framed photo of the three of them. For the first time, he allowed himself to cry fully, without shame or restraint. He cried until he could no longer breathe. until his body shook, until exhaustion pulled him into a sleep filled with shadows. The next morning, he knew life would never be the same. The company, the workers, the mansion, all of it was now his responsibility. But he also knew something else, something his father used to say. A man's true greatness is measured not by how much he has, but by how much love he leaves behind. Michael wiped his tears, stood up tall, and stepped out of the room. The city had lost a hero. The mansion had lost its heart. But a new chapter was beginning. And Michael was about to learn that his father's final decision, the will, held a secret that could change everything. When dawn broke the morning after the burial, the mansion that once echoed with laughter, movement, and life felt painfully still. The gardens outside swayed softly in the wind, but inside the silence was heavy like a blanket laid over memories that were now too painful to face. Michael Chukwu awoke with swollen eyes and a pounding head. He had cried until his body collapsed into sleep, and waking up only brought the crushing realization back. His parents were truly gone. He sat up slowly, feeling the emptiness of the room. His father's sandals still lay at the edge of the bed. His mother's silk scarf hung on the wall hook. Nothing had changed, yet everything had changed. A soft knock came at the door. "Sir Michael, breakfast is ready," a maid whispered, fear tightening her voice. Michael wiped his face and opened the door. The maid immediately stepped back respectfully, not out of duty, but uncertainty. The other maids stood behind her and a line heads bowed, hands clasped nervously. They were afraid. Not because of anything he had done, but because wealth often changes people, and power changes them even more. Stories of rich children returning home to destroy everything their good parents built haunted their minds. Some feared he might fire them. Some worried he would reduce salaries. Some thought he might treat them as servants, not family. Some simply believed no one could match his father's heart. Michael saw the fear in their eyes and felt a sharp pain. These were the people his parents had loved, people who had loved his parents in return. They didn't deserve fear. "Good morning," he said softly, offering a small smile. "Please, don't be afraid of me." The maids exchanged glances. One of the older women stepped forward timidly. We did not want to disturb you. We didn't know if you wanted us to continue our duties." Michael exhaled slowly. "My father cared for all of you. My mother respected all of you. And I promise," he paused, his voice deep with sincerity, "I will treat you the same way they did. You are safe here. This home is still your home." Tears filled the eyes of several maids. Some covered their mouths in relief. One young girl, no older than 19, suddenly broke down, sobbing into her apron. Michael stepped forward and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to cry," he whispered. She nodded, overwhelmed. "It's just that. We were scared we'd lose everything," she confessed. "Your father was our protector. Your mother was our mother. We didn't know what you would become." Michael felt a lump in his throat. "I will not become a monster," he promised gently. "I will continue their legacy." Later that morning, Michael gathered the entire staff in the living room, the same room where his parents used to address them with warmth and affection. He stood before them, wearing his father's navy blue kaftan, which fit him surprisingly well, as if destiny had woven it just for this moment. "Thank you all for being here," he began. His voice wavered at first, but soon steadied. "I know these past days have been difficult for all of us. My parents loved you deeply, and I know you love them back." Heads bowed. Some wiped tears. The loss was shared by everyone. Michael continued, "As of today, nothing will change. Your jobs are secure. Your salaries will remain the same, and where possible, I intend to improve them. You have worked hard, and you deserve dignity." The room filled with soft gasps. Some maids covered their mouths in disbelief. "I will be relying on you," Michael added, "not only to keep the house running, but to help me run the company as well. Many of you have served this family longer than I've been alive. Your experience matters." A murmur of relief and joy spread through the crowd. The chief gardener stepped forward, bowing deeply. "Sir Michael," he said, his voice thick, "your father was a great man. But today I see that his greatness lives in you." Another maid, who had served for 20 years, added, "We were afraid, but now we know you are truly your father's son." The room filled with nods of agreement. Michael raised his hand gently. "I'm not trying to replace my father," he said. "No one can, but I will honor him by living the values he taught me. This home, this business, this family, everything he built will continue with love." The staff clapped softly. Some cried openly. For the first time since his arrival, Michael felt a small flame of hope warm his chest. His parents' legacy was not ending, it was continuing through him. That afternoon, Michael visited his father's office at the company headquarters. It was grand yet humble, filled with awards, photographs, and handwritten notes. When he sat in the leather chair behind the desk, the weight of the empire settled on his shoulders. The board members arrived, stiff in their suits, unsure of how the young man would rule. But Michael surprised them. He listened with respect. He asked thoughtful questions. He didn't pretend to know everything. He acknowledged their experience, and slowly they warmed to him. Just like the staff at home, they began to understand. Michael carried his father's heart. That evening, after returning home, Michael stood in front of his parents' portraits. Something strange tugged at him, an instinct, a whisper, a question. What had his father planned for him? Why had the lawyer looked so uneasy at the funeral? Why had no one mentioned the will? He didn't know it yet, but a truth was coming, a truth his father had hidden, a truth that would test his character, a truth that would reshape his destiny, a truth stored in a sealed envelope waiting for the right moment to be opened. In the golden heart of the bustling city of Untold, where fortunes were made overnight and dreams often came with a price, there lived a man whose wealth was legendary, but whose kindness was even greater. His name was Chief Darlington Chukwu, a man admired not for the riches he possessed, but for the richness of his heart. People often said that Chief Darlington's wealth was a river, but his compassion was an ocean. His mansion sat atop a hill, painted in soft white and surrounded by gardens that bloomed year-round. But what truly made the mansion special were the people who lived in it, the maids, the gardeners, the cooks, the guards, and staff of every kind who had found not only employment there, but a family. Chief Darlington believed something deeply, something he repeated often. If God gives you plenty, let others drink from your cup. He treated every worker in his home not as a servant, but as a child entrusted to his care. Every morning he made sure the maids had breakfast before starting their duties. If one of them fell ill, he personally arranged for medical treatment. If a maid wished to study at night school, he paid the fees and bought the books. When a gardener's son lost his father, Chief Darlington took full responsibility for the boy's education. When a cook's daughter was getting married, he gifted her with a dowry that made her weep with gratitude. In return, the staff adored him. They worked not out of fear, but out of love. But the center of Chief Darlington's world, the crown upon his head, and the rhythm of his heartbeat, was Lady Clara Chukwu, his devoted wife. They had been married for over 25 years, yet they loved each other like newlyweds. Lady Clara was elegant in the simple way that flowers are elegant, soft-spoken, gentle, but with a presence that filled the room. They were never seen apart. When he attended business meetings abroad, she went with him. When she traveled for charity, he went with her. Their marriage was the kind of union people wrote novels about. Every evening, after the household tasks were done, Chief Darlington and Lady Clara walked hand in hand through the garden, talking about their dreams, their memories, and the future they hoped their son, Michael, would build someday. Yes, they had only one child, Michael Chukwu, studying abroad, preparing to inherit his father's empire. Chief Darlington often said, "Michael will lead with a soft heart, not a hard hand." Their hope in him was strong. Life seemed perfect. Until the night everything changed. It began with a quiet evening. Lady Clara was in the kitchen supervising dinner preparations while Chief Darlington relaxed on the sofa, reading the newspaper like he did every night. The maids moved around softly, humming familiar tunes as they worked. Then suddenly Chief Darlington gasped. The newspaper slipped from his hands. He clutched his chest, his face twisted with pain. "Darling," Lady Clara cried, rushing to him. The maids screamed. The mansion erupted in panic. Doctors arrived within minutes, rushing into the living room. Machines beeped. Needles pierced skin. Prayers filled the halls. But death, once it chooses a moment, rarely changes its mind. Chief Darlington looked into his wife's eyes one last time. His breath slowed. His fingers tightened around hers. "My love," he whispered. Lady Clara held him tightly, shaking her head violently as tears soaked his shirt. "No, don't leave me," she begged. "Please, I can't live without you." But those were the last words she ever spoke while standing. Chief Darlington's chest fell still. His eyes dimmed. His hand relaxed. Lady Clara let out a sound so heart-shattering that even the maids in the hallway collapsed in tears. She pressed her head to his chest, holding him as if her own heartbeat depended on his. And then her body grew still. Her breath stopped. Her fingers intertwined with his grew cold. She had followed him into death. When the doctor checked her pulse, he stepped back slowly. "She's gone," he whispered. Gone with her head resting on her husband's chest, hand in hand exactly as they had lived. News spread across Anduka City before dawn. Streets filled with mourners. Even business rivals sent condolences. Markets closed early. Schools held candlelight gatherings. A love story had ended. A city was grieving. And far away, across the ocean, a young man named Michael Chukwu was about to receive the call that would change his life forever. The days following Michael's return passed like a dream, soft, fragile, and heavy with the fragrance of memory. The mansion slowly regained rhythm. The maids were smiling again, the gardens blossomed, and laughter from the younger workers returned. The Chukwu household was healing, not quickly, but beautifully. Michael sat in his father's office one evening, staring at the framed photograph of Chief Darlington and Lady Clara. They stood arm in arm in front of the company, headquarters, their smiles bright, their eyes shining with purpose and pride. "How did you do it, Papa?" Michael whispered. "How did you lead and love at the same time?" He leaned back, rubbing his eyes. He wanted to honor them, but he was overwhelmed. The company was large, the responsibilities countless, and he faced constant pressure to marry. Everyone reminded him daily, "Sir Michael, you must choose a wife. Your father would want a daughter-in-law by now. The company needs stability. Get married soon." But in Michael's heart, he felt unprepared. He wanted love, not pressure. He wanted sincerity, not appearances. He wanted someone who valued people the way his parents had. He had no idea that his father's desire for him to choose wisely was written into a document, one that could transform his destiny or shatter it. Mr. Bakari, the family lawyer, sat in his office with sleepless eyes. For days he had debated inside himself whether to reveal the truth to Michael, but the will was clear. Chief Darlington's voice echoed in his mind. "Do not give him the will until he marries, and only if he marries a woman of good heart. Do not fail me, Bakari." The lawyer opened his safe for the 100th time. Inside was an elegant white envelope sealed with red wax, the symbol of the Chukwu family crest. The envelope felt heavier than paper, heavier than ink. It felt like a life. The will inside was not ordinary. It contained the full extent of Chief Darlington's empire. Properties, stocks, accounts, shares, land, businesses, everything he had built with decades of sweat. But the document also contained a condition. If Michael married a good woman, a woman with compassion, humility, and sincerity, then he would inherit everything. If he did not, if he married out of greed, if he married a cruel woman, a proud woman, a woman who despised the poor, then every cabo, every building, every business, every share would be donated to orphans and the less privileged. This was his father's final test, and no one except Mr. Bikor knew it existed. The lawyer sighed deeply and ran a hand over his tired face. "Lord, help this boy make the right choice," he whispered. Back at the mansion, marriage suggestions flowed like a river. A governor's daughter visited the mansion with chocolates, smiling sweetly but glaring at the maids. A wealthy businesswoman invited Michael to dinner. and spent the entire evening speaking about money. A politician hinted he could strengthen Michael's business if Michael married his niece. But none of them moved Michael's heart. He observed them carefully. Some were beautiful but lacked gentleness. Some were powerful but lacked empathy. Some were charming but lacked sincerity. His mother once told him, "A woman's beauty may turn heads, but her heart determines the home she will build." He remembered that. He remembered everything. But the staff were worried. What if he marries the wrong person? What if the new wife mistreats us? What if she cares only for money? Rumors swirled. Fear whispered through the halls. But no one, not even Michael, imagined that his father had woven these questions into a powerful legal condition. Michael sat in the garden one evening, overwhelmed. What if I fail? The stars twinkled above him, and the wind brushed his skin softly. He closed his eyes and imagined his father sitting beside him, speaking the same words he used to say. "My son, the world is full of people who shine like gold, but have hearts of stone. Choose the heart, not the shine." Michael placed his hand on his chest. "I just want someone who loves humans the way you did, Papa. Someone who will treat the maids with respect, the poor with dignity, and the world with kindness." He sighed. It felt impossible. Where will I find such a woman? He whispered that same night, somewhere across the city, a young woman named Grace Nuosu finished her shift at the primary school where she taught. She had no idea her destiny was intertwining with Michael's. Grace carried leftover food in small containers and walked through the old part of town. She found an elderly woman sitting alone, hungry. Grace knelt beside her. "Mama, you must eat," she said gently. She fed her with her own hands. She didn't know that far away in a mansion on a hill, someone was praying for a woman whose heart matched hers. The next morning, the lawyer arrived at the mansion. He bowed respectfully. "Sir Michael," he said, "there is an important matter I must discuss with you." Michael frowned. "Is it about the company?" "No," the lawyer whispered, his voice heavy with secrecy. "It is about your father." Michael's heart thumped hard. He was about to learn something life-changing, something hidden, something powerful. But the lawyer's next words shocked him. "Michael, your father left instructions about your future, but I cannot reveal them to you until you marry." Michael froze. "My father said that?" "Yes," the lawyer confirmed. "He believed your choice of a wife would decide everything." Michael's mind spun. Everything? What did that mean? But Mr. Bakari did not answer. He could not. The will was sealed until the right woman appeared. Michael suddenly realized that his next decision, the next woman he chose, the next step he took, would change his life forever. The lawyer's revelation lingered in Michael's mind like an unfinished sentence. The idea that his father, his wise, loving, thoughtful father, had placed the destiny of the entire Chukwu empire in the hands of a future bride, both frightened and humbled him. "Choose well, my son." Those words echoed in his heart even though they were never spoken aloud. From that day forward, the pressure to marry intensified. Family friends visited more often. Business partners dropped hints. Even the media began to whisper about the bachelor heir. But Michael wasn't concerned about gossip. He was concerned about making a mistake. If he married a woman without a good heart, he would not just lose his inheritance. He would fail his father's final test. He would break the legacy built on kindness. He would betray the trust his parents placed in him from childhood. He refused to let that happen. Just 1 week after the lawyer's visit, the Chukwu mansion became a destination for would-be brides. She arrived in a limousine, stepping out as if the ground itself was beneath her dignity. She smiled at Michael, but glared at the maids. When one maid accidentally spilled water near her shoes, she snapped, "Are you blind? Move before you embarrass me again." Michael watched quietly. His decision was already made. She left the mansion confused by his polite but cold dismissal. Her family owned hotels across the country. She was elegant, brilliant, and obsessed with status. Over lunch, she asked, "How much is your father's company currently worth? I want to know what I am stepping into." Michael's smile faded. What about the people? He asked. What about the workers who run the company daily? She rolled her eyes. You mean the staff? Darling, when we marry, we'll hire new ones. Better ones. This place needs modernization. Michael ended the meeting immediately. She dressed beautifully and laughed melodically, until she noticed the gardener trimming hedges. Why is that man cutting grass in my presence? She complained loudly. Tell him to move. Michael felt himself becoming annoyed. That man fed this family with vegetables from the garden for 15 years, he said slowly. Show respect, she scoffed. Another failed suitor. Inside the mansion, fear began to grow again. Michael's rejection of every woman made the maids nervous. Sir Michael is being too selective, Mama Esther whispered. What if he marries someone out of desperation later? Another maid added. What if the wrong woman wins him by pretending to be good? What if she throws us out? The workers worried because they understood something Michael did not yet know. A person's heart can be disguised, but actions speak louder than charm. Still, they trusted him more than they feared the future. He has his father's eyes, the gatekeeper Baba Tun said wisely. He will see the truth. One evening, after rejecting yet another suitor, Michael stood alone on the balcony overlooking the city. Lights sparkled like stars on the ground, and the wind brushed softly against him. He closed his eyes and whispered, Lord, please, help me find someone like Mama, someone gentle, someone compassionate, someone who won't destroy what my father built. He remembered something his mother used to say, Michael, never choose a woman by her looks or her voice. Choose her by the way she treats those who can give her nothing. He sighed deeply. Where am I supposed to find such a woman? His cousins and female friends also brought options. One friend introduced him to a medical doctor. She was brilliant but spoke harshly about the poor. Another brought a fashion designer who boasted non-stop about herself. A third introduced a social media influencer whose greatest dream was to marry rich and become famous. Michael grew more discouraged with each meeting. He began to wonder, did my father expect me to fail? Did he believe I wouldn't find the right woman? But deep inside, he knew the truth. Chief Darlington believed in his son. He trusted him. He knew Michael had a good heart. The problem was not Michael's ability to choose. The problem was that the right woman had not yet appeared. Not until fate intervened. One Saturday morning, Michael attended a charity event held by a local church. His parents had always supported the mission, and he felt responsible to continue. But as he arrived, he realized the event was chaotic and poorly organized. Volunteers shouted instructions, children ran around hungry, and elderly people sat waiting under the sun. Where is the food? Someone cried. We have no one distributing it, another volunteer answered helplessly. Michael stepped forward to help, but then he noticed someone standing at the far corner of the courtyard. A woman. She was kneeling beside a frail elderly woman, feeding her with gentle hands. She wiped the woman's mouth, fixed her scarf, and smiled warmly. Nearby, a young boy tugged her dress. Auntie, can I get water? Yes, my darling, she said softly. Wait here. She rushed to get water, returned quickly, and held the cup for the boy as he drank. Michael felt something shift inside him. This was not charity for show. This was not kindness for applause. This was love in action. The woman had no idea anyone was watching. She wasn't beautiful in a glamorous magazine way, but she radiated warmth, sincerity, and joy. Her name, he later learned, was Grace Nuasu, and the moment Michael saw her, his heart whispered, maybe this is her. He stepped toward her slowly, unsure of how to begin, yet feeling as though destiny had already started the conversation. This moment would change everything. For Michael, for the mansion, for the company, and for the future his father had planned. But Grace didn't know that yet, and neither did Michael. All he knew was that fate had finally taken him by the hand and led him toward the woman who could save him or lose him everything. Michael couldn't stop thinking about her. That woman at the charity event, the way she knelt to feed the elderly woman, the way she gave water to the thirsty boy, the gentle way she smiled, as if kindness flowed naturally through her veins. It wasn't something he could forget. It wasn't pretentious. It wasn't staged. It wasn't for attention. It was real. Her compassion had touched something dormant inside him, a quiet place in his heart that longed for sincerity. The same sincerity he had grown up seeing in his father and mother. He returned home that day with a mind full of questions. Who is she? Where does she live? Does she volunteer often? Was this fate? He felt something unusual hope. For weeks he had met women who possessed beauty, wealth, influence, but no kindness. Now he had witnessed someone with a heart softer than petals, but he didn't know her name. He didn't know how to find her. He didn't even know if she was single. Yet something inside whispered, "You will meet her again." 3 days later, after a long meeting at the company, Michael took a detour through one of the older parts of the city. His father had always driven through those streets to remind himself of humility, and Michael found comfort there. As he drove slowly, he noticed a crowd gathered beneath a giant mango tree. Children giggled, old women clapped, young boys danced. In the center of the crowd was the same woman feeding the less privileged. She handed out bowls of rice and stew from a large cooler. A few friends helped her serve, but it was clear she was the leader. She moved with purpose, care, and joy. Michael's heart raced. He parked the car and stepped out. At first, no one noticed him. But the moment the crowd parted slightly, Grace looked up and their eyes met. She froze briefly, surprised to see a well-dressed stranger walking toward her. Michael smiled gently. "Hello," he said softly. I saw you last week at the charity event." She nodded politely. "Yes, I remember. You were helping carry the water containers." Michael chuckled. Trying to help at least. Her smile warmed him. He glanced at the people she was feeding and asked, "Do you do this often?" Grace nodded. "Every Wednesday and Saturday. Some of these people depend on it." Her voice was calm but carried a weight of responsibility. Michael looked at her cooler than the number of people waiting. "This must cost you a lot," he said. Grace shrugged. "Not as much as it costs them to be hungry." Her words hit him deeply. He watched her continue feeding people with tenderness, calling them sir, ma, my brother, my sister. She treated the homeless like family. He had never seen anything like it. When the food finished, Grace packed her plates and washed her hands near a bucket someone had placed on the ground. Michael approached nervously. "I don't want to disturb you," he began, "but may I ask why you do this?" Grace sighed softly and looked out at the street. "I grew up in an orphanage," she said quietly. "We often didn't have enough food. Some days we survived because a stranger cared." She smiled faintly. "Now that I'm older, I want someone else to feel that same relief." Michael swallowed hard. Her story touched something deep in him. "And your parents?" he asked gently. "I never knew them," she said. "But I had good teachers, and I worked hard. Now I'm a school teacher, and whenever I can save a little money, I use it to feed people." She didn't say it to boast. She said it because it was simply who she was. Michael studied her face. There was no pride there, no need for validation, only genuine kindness. "Your heart is rare," he said softly. She blinked, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. "And you," she said with a curious tilt of her head. "What brings someone dressed like you to these streets?" Michael chuckled nervously. "My father taught me to respect everyone, no matter their situation. I'm trying to continue his teachings." Grace nodded, impressed. "He must have been a good man. The best," Michael whispered. They began walking together toward her car, continuing their conversation. Grace spoke about her students, her dream of building a small learning center for poor children, her belief that kindness was the only true wealth. Michael spoke about his parents, their deaths, the company, and his desire not to lose the values they instilled in him. Grace looked at him sympathetically. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said gently. "They must have been wonderful people to raise a man who cares like you." Michael felt warmth in her words. "Thank you," he said. "I hope I make them proud," she smiled. "I think you already are." Before she left, he took a bold step. "Grace, may I see you again? Perhaps we could talk more." Maybe I could help with your feeding program." She paused, studying him with cautious eyes. "Helping is good," she said slowly, "but I don't need attention or charity. I only help because it makes me happy." Michael nodded. "I understand, and I respect that." Then, as if her heart softened a little, she smiled. "All right, we can meet again. Saturday morning. Same place." Michael felt joy spark inside him. "Saturday," he repeated. As she drove away, he stood there watching until her car disappeared down the road. For the first time since his parents' death, he felt truly hopeful. He whispered into the wind, "Maybe you sent her, Papa. Maybe this is your doing." What Michael didn't know was that Grace was not just a woman who would change his heart. She was the woman who would determine his entire future. Because somewhere inside a sealed envelope, a will was waiting, and the choice of a wife would soon unlock it. From the moment Grace drove away, Michael felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: anticipation. Something in his chest stirred like a soft flame being gently fed by the wind. He walked back to his car with a smile he didn't try to hide. For the first time since his parents were buried, the shadows around him seemed lighter. 3 days later, Saturday arrived like a promise. Michael woke earlier than usual, dressed simply, no expensive suits, just a navy t-shirt and jeans. He didn't want to impress Grace with wealth. He wanted to meet her as himself. By 7 a.m., he arrived at the mango tree where the less privileged usually gathered. Children were already waiting, sitting on stones and broken buckets, chatting excitedly. Soon, Grace's old car pulled up, and she stepped out with a large cooler and trays stacked neatly. When she saw Michael, her expression soft with recognition and a hint of surprise. "You came early," she said. "I didn't want to miss anything," he replied. She gave a small smile, genuine, warm, shy. They unloaded the food together. The cooler was heavier than it looked, and Michael carried most of the load while Grace directed the setup. As the children ran toward them, Grace called out, "Everyone, one line, no pushing. There's enough for all." Her voice was gentle but firm. She knew them by name. "Chidera, wait your turn. Amika, stop teasing your sister. Mama, Ifeoma, come sit under the shade." Michael watched in awe as she navigated the crowd with the confidence of someone who understood hardship and the compassion of someone who refused to let hardship define her. When she noticed Michael observing quietly, she asked, "Are you ready?" He nodded. They served together, side by side, for nearly an hour. And as they worked, he saw more of her heart. Her laughter when a child told a funny story. Her patience when an old man spilled water on her dress. Her gentleness when she adjusted a toddler's torn shoe. Her humility when she thanked everyone who came. Not once did she look at Michael for approval. Not once did she try to impress him. She didn't even ask who he really was. That was perhaps the most shocking part. Every other woman he met wanted to know the details. How much he owned, what the company was worth, how many cars he had, what his inheritance looked like. But Grace didn't ask anything. She treated him as though he were simply a man, nothing more, nothing less. When the feeding was over and the crowd dispersed, Grace packed the empty cooler and wiped her hands with a small handkerchief. "Thank you for helping," she said. Michael shook his head. "You don't need to thank me. I learned a lot today." She laughed softly. "What did you learn?" "That kindness isn't something you pretend. It's something you live." Grace paused, her expression softening. "You talk like someone raised by very good parents." Michael swallowed. "I was." She nodded gently. "I'm glad." They began walking toward the edge of the street, where her car was parked. Along the way, Grace stopped to give money to a crippled man sitting near a wall. "You give even when you've given enough," Michael commented. Grace shrugged. "There's no such thing as enough when someone is in need." She said it so simply, yet the words struck him deeply. At her car, Michael leaned against the door. "Do you do anything else besides teaching and feeding people?" he asked. Grace smiled. Well, I read a lot. I plant flowers around my little house. I try to counsel my students when they're troubled. I visit the orphanage I grew up in once a month." "You grew up in an orphanage?" Michael asked softly. She nodded. Yes, from age 2 until I left at 18. Life wasn't easy, but God placed good people around me. Michael stared at her for a long moment. You turned your pain into compassion, he said quietly. Grace blushed and looked away. Let's not make it sound too dramatic. I just don't want people to feel alone. Her humility took Michael's breath away. Most people use their suffering as an excuse for cruelty, but Grace used hers as fuel for kindness. After a moment of silence, he said, Grace, there's something I'd like you to see someday. My home. It holds many memories of my parents. I think you'd like it. Grace hesitated. I don't know, Michael. I don't want to intrude. You wouldn't be, he assured her. And the staff would love to meet you. The staff? She asked, confused. He smiled. Yes, we have several workers at home. She nodded slowly. If they are anything like you, I'm sure they are good people. Michael's heart warmed. They are family, he said, and meant it. A week later, she agreed to visit. The moment Grace stepped into the mansion, the maids froze as if time stopped. Her beauty wasn't flashy, it was peaceful. Her presence wasn't loud, it was comforting. She greeted every maid respectfully. She thanked the cook for the meal. She played with the gardener's daughter in the backyard. She helped carry dirty cups to the kitchen without being asked. The staff whispered among themselves, She is different. She is humble. She is just like Madame Clara. She is the one. Mama Esther, the head maid, pulled Michael aside. Sir Michael, she whispered urgently, if you don't marry this woman, heaven will be disappointed. Michael laughed softly, but inside he agreed completely. That night after dinner, Michael walked Grace to her car. They stood in silence for a moment, a soft breeze wrapping around them. Thank you for today, Grace said. Your home. It feels warm. Because you were in it, Michael replied before he could stop himself. Grace looked away, blushing. He took a deep breath. Grace, I don't know what the future holds, but I do know this. I want you to be part of mine. She looked up slowly, her eyes shimmering with surprise and emotion. Michael, she whispered, you are a good man. But? He asked gently. No buts, she said with a soft smile. Just give me time. He nodded, deeply relieved. Take all the time you need. But in his heart he already knew. Grace was the woman he wanted to build a future with. Grace was the woman his father would have blessed. Grace was the reason destiny had waited. The weeks that followed felt like a sunrise gently spilling into Michael's life. Grace became a regular presence at the mansion, at the feeding outreaches, and in the quiet corners of his heart. They weren't rushing anything, but every conversation drew them closer. Every moment softened the grief that once consumed him. The maids adored her. The workers respected her. Even the board members noticed a change in Michael, a calmness, a renewed purpose. The mansion, once heavy with sorrow, slowly came alive again. But beneath this harmony, one man carried a heavy burden, Mr. Becar, the family lawyer. He knew the time was drawing near. He knew marriage was approaching. He knew he would soon have to reveal the truth that could reshape everything. It happened on a quiet Sunday evening. Michael and Grace had spent the day with the children at the orphanage. Grace grew up in playing games, reading stories, and sharing food. As they walked through the compound hand in hand, Michael felt something shift inside him. She wasn't just a good woman. She was the right woman. The kind of woman his parents prayed for. The kind of woman who lit the world by simply being herself. When they returned to the mansion, Michael asked her to walk with him in the garden, his father's favorite place. The sky glowed purple with the early kiss of dusk. Birds fluttered in the nearby trees. The breeze carried the sweet scent of roses his mother planted many years ago. They stopped beside the fountain. Grace, he began slowly, his voice trembling, my life changed when I met you. You brought light into a house that was drowning in grief. You showed kindness without effort and sincerity without trying. Grace looked down shyly, her heart racing. Michael took her hands gently. I don't know everything about love, but I know that I want to learn with you. You make me want to be my best self. You make me feel whole again. Tears welled in Grace's eyes. He knelt slowly on one knee. Grace Nwasi, will you marry me? Her hand flew to her mouth. Tears spilled freely. Michael? Yes, she whispered, her voice breaking. Yes, I will marry you. The maids watching secretly from the balcony began cheering like children. Even the guards smiled proudly. The mansion once filled with sorrow exploded with joy. Michael refused a flashy ceremony. He wanted a wedding that honored his parents' values. So they held the ceremony in the mansion garden. Grace wore a simple, elegant gown. Michael wore his father's favorite white kaftan. The maids were bridesmaids. The gardeners decorated the flowers. The cook prepared the meal. The musicians were the choir from Grace's orphanage. There was no show of wealth, no display of ego, just love. As Grace walked down the aisle, the workers whispered, "She is perfect." Madame Clara would be smiling in heaven. Chief Darlington would be so proud. Michael cried openly as she reached him. Their vows were simple. I choose you. I respect you. I will walk through life with kindness by your side. And when they kissed, joy rippled through the crowd like a wave. Grace had become Mrs. Grace Chukwu, the new lady of the house. And she stepped into the role with humility and grace, loving everyone just as Michael's parents had. But the celebration had barely ended when a black car slowly drove into the compound. Inside was Mr. Bakari, holding the envelope that carried the weight of an entire dynasty. Michael and Grace were sitting together beneath the mango tree behind the mansion when the lawyer approached. Sir Michael, he said quietly, I have carried your father's instructions for a long time. Today I must fulfill them. Michael frowned, confused. Is everything all right? The lawyer sighed deeply, his voice filled with emotion. Your father left a will, but he ordered me not to reveal it until you married. Michael's heart skipped. Grace tightened her grip on his hand. The maids gathered nearby, sensing something important was happening. Mr. Bakari opened the sealed envelope slowly, like unveiling a mystery. Inside was a beautifully handwritten letter and several legal documents. He cleared his throat and read aloud, My beloved son, Michael, if you are reading this, it means you have chosen a wife. But I prayed you did not choose based on beauty, wealth, or status. I prayed you chose based on heart, the heart that will build your home, the heart that will honor your mother's kindness, the heart that will continue the legacy your mother and I lived for. Michael's eyes filled with tears. Grace looked down, overwhelmed. The lawyer continued, My son, if you married a woman without compassion, a woman who disrespects the poor or the weak, a woman who treats the staff with cruelty, then everything I own, every business, every house, every land should be given to the motherless and the less privileged. Gasps erupted in the garden. Grace covered her mouth. Michael trembled. The lawyer read the final lines. But if you married a woman with a good heart, a woman who loves without pretending, a woman who treats others with dignity, then she and you will inherit my entire legacy. Because only such a woman is worthy of carrying the Chukwu name. The lawyer looked up, his voice trembling. Michael, Grace is that woman. Your parents would be overjoyed. The maids began crying. The gardeners clapped. Baba Tund whispered, God is faithful. Michael stood and pulled Grace into his arms. You were my gift, he whispered into her hair. Papa chose you long before I did, Grace cried against his chest. The mansion glowed that evening, not with lights, but with warmth. What had once been a place of mourning had returned to life again. The workers hummed songs as they moved about. The gardens were lit with gentle lanterns, and laughter floated through the air, like a melody the house had long forgotten. Michael and Grace sat quietly under the mango tree after the lawyer left. The branches above them rustled softly, as though the tree itself remembered Chief Darlington and Lady Clara, and now welcomed the new chapter they had unknowingly prepared for. Grace rested her head on Michael's shoulder. For a long moment they said nothing. The only sounds were the distant chatter of the maids and the night crickets beginning their song. Michael, Grace whispered eventually, your father? He must have loved you deeply to think so far ahead. Michael exhaled, a mixture of relief and emotion tightening his chest. He did everything with purpose, he said. and he protected his legacy the only way he knew how, through love. Grace closed her eyes. He trusted you, and he trusted the choice you would make. Michael swallowed hard and kissed her forehead. I'm grateful I found you, Grace whispered back. I'm grateful you chose me, and that your father believed I was worthy. The next morning, the mansion woke with a different energy, one of celebration, renewal, and hope. Mama Esther gathered the maids in the kitchen. Today, she declared proudly, we cook for joy. Let this house feel alive again. The cooks clapped their hands together. Extra pepper soup, pounded yam, chicken stew, plantain for everyone. They prepared dishes Michael's parents used to love. As the aromas filled the house, the air vibrated with memories, comforting ones now, instead of painful shadows. Grace spent the morning helping in the kitchen, tying an apron around her waist, laughing with the staff, slicing tomatoes, peeling yam, and burning her hand lightly on a hot pot. Auntie Grace, one maid cried, please leave the burning for us. Grace laughed. I'm still learning. Michael watched from the doorway, his heart swelling. Seeing her there, unafraid to get messy, unbothered by status, laughing freely with workers, confirmed what he already knew. She belonged in this house. She belonged in his life. She belonged in his parents' legacy. A week later, Michael introduced Grace to the board of directors. Some were skeptical at first. They expected a glamorous, polished woman, but instead they met someone humble, soft-spoken, and deeply intelligent. One director asked, Mrs. Chukwu, what do you think a good company should stand for? Grace didn't hesitate. A good company must serve people, its employees, its customers, and the communities around it. Wealth gained without compassion is not success. It is emptiness with a price tag. The room fell silent. Michael smiled, proud. The chairman leaned forward. Well said, Mrs. Chukwu, your husband chose wisely. Grace simply nodded with humility. Over the next few months, Michael and Grace worked hand in hand. They raised scholarships for orphans. They opened a clinic for the poor. They increased workers' benefits at the company. They started a foundation in Chief Darlington and Lady Clara's honor. Everywhere they touched, kindness blossomed. One evening, Michael stood alone in his father's study. The room smelled of old books, wood polish, and the faint trace of his father's cologne, scent that tugged at memories. He touched the wooden desk where his father once sat, negotiating deals not for himself but for the greater good. He whispered, Papa, I hope we're doing it right. I hope we're making you proud. As he spoke, he felt a comforting warmth in his chest, a feeling he had not felt since his father died. It wasn't physical. It was emotional, spiritual, a gentle reminder that he wasn't alone. Grace entered quietly, wrapping her arms around him from behind. You are doing everything right, Michael, everything. He turned and hugged her tightly. I want to be like him. Grace tilted his chin up. You already are, and you will go even further, because you are building on the foundation he left behind. Michael kissed her forehead, grateful beyond words. Months passed and love filled every corner of the Chukwu mansion. The maids danced as they cleaned. The gardeners sang songs as they trimmed the hedges. Even the guards laughed more often. Grace had become a sister to them, a comfort, a presence of peace. One afternoon, the youngest maid, Angzusi, approached Grace nervously. Auntie Grace, she whispered, I want to go back to school, but I'm afraid to tell anyone. Grace smiled warmly. My dear, dreams are not meant to stay quiet. They're meant to grow. That same day, Grace and Michael paid her full school fees. Later, Michael told Grace, you're changing lives here. No, she replied, touching his cheek. We're doing it together. Michael and Grace have stepped into a legacy built on love, compassion, and humility. The Chukwu mansion, once drowning in grief, now thrives with life again. The company is flourishing under their care. The workers, once afraid of the future, now walk with confidence. Far away, across the city, in a dimly lit room filled with smoke and silence, a man watched news clips of the Chukwu Empire flourishing under Michael and Grace's leadership. He clenched his jaw. His eyes darkened. He turned off the screen violently. This should have been mine, he hissed. The Chukwu legacy. The wealth, the influence. It all belonged to me before Darlington ruined everything. He walked to the window, staring out at the night. "But I will fix that," he whispered. "I will take back what is mine." The boy cannot protect everything. He is too soft, too trusting. A new threat rises, a storm is coming. And the question remains, will evil truly overpower good? Or will love and kindness stand strong against the darkness? To find out what happens next, to see how Michael and Grace face the danger that is coming, and to witness whether the Chukwu legacy survives or falls, make sure you like this story, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel. Season 2 is coming soon. And trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next.